haven't made a video in a bit around the conversion of our neighbor's lawn to food forest project, which I've been documenting in a whole bunch of steps since April, early May. Very basic gist of it, if you aren't familiar, is on the other side of our fence line here. We've spoken with our neighbor and have gotten permission to plant out a perennial food forest, some annual gardens, and we even dug a huge pond, and I'd like to make an update on that. To the east of our fence here, most of the elements are dormant. They've been chewed on by deer. They're not that amazing looking, but they're all mainly alive. And in here, the currants, elderberry, a block of willows on either side, and some sunchokes, which have been hammered by voles, but I'm sure will come back in the spring. I'll talk about this a little bit more in a moment, but we're now working on an overflow channel to shunt excess water from a pond, which I'll be getting into detail with in a minute. We've got potatoes planted through the middle of there. I don't know with all this water if they're completely rotten, if voles have eaten them or what, but we're going to try to get in there today, harvest potatoes, and get this water channel to keep going down further so that we're not as waterlogged in this space. We haven't finalized the 14-foot by 50-foot high tunnel here yet at all, but the basic sketch of the garden beds is in place. You can see 2 4-foot wide beds with a central walkway. This will all make more sense. We'll do a more thorough update video on this when we actually put it up, but we got a kit from Farmer's Friend online. Remains to be seen if we love it or not, but so far it seems like pretty nice material. And this is a Gothic arch, so it should be good for our cold, wintry months. 14 feet by 50 should give us a huge amount of season extension. And some nice new friends came up from Pennsylvania to get some plants. Thanks, Brian and Tom, and they brought some organic hay bales. So we'll be able to include those hay bales along with compost from our chicken yard into the far end of this structure once it's up, to do some experiments with compost heating a 14 by 50 foot space. It'll be a nice scale up on our experiments with season extension. The most exciting part to share is that the pond we put in around Labor Day weekend of this season is now just about full. Exciting and scary at the same time, because I'm going to go into detail with this, but the overflow for this, I thought we had measured it properly. It was off by about a foot, so there's going to be a fair bit of earthwork to be done to secure the overflow so it doesn't blow out towards our garden. But it's pretty amazing to see this much water coming in. We've been getting more rains, and the pond is really responding to that, mainly filling from the bottom, but we can see where there's a little spring somewhere in there that's charging water. And when it rains, it's definitely accumulating from here. There's been so much turbulence with the rains and the freezing and the thawing that the water's pretty cloudy, but I think once we get it vegetated and we get some nice fish life in there, it should start to clarify. I'd love to get input from folks. What do you recommend? In Central New York State, Zone 5B, north-facing slope. It's about 10 or 12 feet deep in the middle. It's not super huge. Some fish that are ecologically appropriate that can play well with others. Maybe we could eat them if need be. Any suggestions on those? What about some perennial vegetables that are aquatic that we can put on the boundaries here, or medicinals? I'd love to hear some thoughts. As I come along here, you can see the ultimate high water line that we designed for is right here. Transitions, this is the basic grade from here on. And my thought was, the initial little pond that we dug in here with our neighbor's backhoe would not end up being where all the water flowed out. I had a sense that this original channel would be where it would want to go, but I thought we had designed the rest of the pond appropriately, that this would not be the lowest point, but it certainly is. If I look at it from a little higher up, that's the original little test pond, which prompted the idea that it would be promising to dig the rest of this, which is now a pretty significant amount of water. And it can go up another foot or two and actually go up these steps, which would make it a much higher amount of total surface area. But getting back to the overflow and concern/potential for design is where this little pad of rice is. There was a channel that I'd originally dug that sent the water down into our pond system in our main garden. And I realized what I don't want to do is just inundate a constant wall of water into our garden. It's already pretty wet in the wet months. So my hope was that we used a laser level to get this walking level, or final step, that should be dead level and fill with water evenly. My hope was to have the overflow go out through here and around the high tunnel and through the willows. But right now it looks like I'm going to have to ask quite a bit to get to that overflow. I think what we're going to end up having to do is down here where I want to retain more water and not have it flow through is grab a whole lot of the bulked up rough sketch soil that we had over here. We grew winter squash and tomatoes in that this year, and grab some of that material and start bulking up this far end and turn it into a living, absorbing perennial lump wall. In other words, taking loose soil and some subsoil here, maybe some stones to flank and protect from flow, grabbing that material, not digging down below grade, and adding more and more and more up into here. We put willows in this spring in this area. These were actually rooted plants and they did incredibly well. Lots and lots of deer browse, but most of them are 6 to 8 feet tall. They're going to really fill out. And so my thought was this berm of soil could be loaded with elderberries, maybe some more sea buckthorn, maybe some other high value absorbent shrubs and trees that can really load this soil with roots, expand it, make it a little bit more erosive resistant, and encourage the water to go the other way. If this gets high enough, then I think the water can ultimately have its static high level line be right where this grass edge is. Then the challenge will be on this far side. I think what we'll have to do, you can see the water level looks lower and lower and lower, is this whole walkway is going to have to go down probably 6 inches, maybe even to a foot. This channel here is where extreme overflow can be shunted that way. The walkway itself may need to actually be a sill to have water overflow from this pond. And I'll have to think about how to make that still walkable. Does it have boards? Does it have perforated pipe that runs through that bottom channel? That remains to be seen. Definitely realizing that in order to have a lot of say over all this without it being a miserable job, we need to act on it sooner than later. The water just keeps on rising, and once it's fully in here, we'll be mucking about in standing water, stirring it up. Be a lot less nice for us and for the quality of the water. So we'll document this in more detail. I'd love to get some input from folks. How do we flank and berm down here? Maybe there is a minor overflow that goes all the way across contour this way. Some suggestions and input definitely welcome at this point because we haven't done a lot of modification. But today we're going to work on the overflow channel, making sure it's at least somewhat cleared out and ready to flow. From that point, where you can see it gets to be water onward, I've already gone through with the shovel and done that sketching work. It wraps around this bed. It comes down close to the bed. Ultimately, we may put a pipe in here or just some boards on top, and zips around, makes some turns, and goes all the way down through these willows. Sasha and I will work on getting the potatoes harvested out of the rest of this central vein through here, see what sort of yield we can still have, and get water all the way down to that far end. So lots of work to be done, but overall pretty exciting. Let me know what you think. Some suggestions on what sort of fish we should think about, perennial aquatic vegetables and medicines that can go into that pond, and thoughts about overflow and organization. And as we evolve the plan, we'll share more notes with you too. Thanks, take care.